I need police immediately. This man is aggressive. He's blocking legal community access, and he's harassing paying members of our association. Send a unit now. I stood there, phone in hand, watching my neighbor scream into her cell phone, calling the cops on me for kicking strangers off my own land. She was standing in the middle of my driveway, chest heaving, clipboard clutched like a shield, absolutely radiating that specific brand of terrifying confidence that only comes from someone who has never been told no in their entire adult life. She was so certain she was right. She was so convinced that she had the authority to turn my front yard into a public park. But here's the thing she didn't realize, the one tiny detail that was about to turn her entire world into a smoking crater. Those guests she was defending, they had just handed me a receipt. And the moment she hit send on that 911 call, she didn't realize it, but she was essentially handcuffing herself. It's funny how that works, isn't it? Sometimes the most arrogant people are the ones who dig their own graves with the most enthusiasm. To understand how I ended up in a standoff with a frantic woman and 12 confused strangers holding coolers, you have to understand what this cabin meant to me. It wasn't just a piece of real estate. Inheriting my great-aunt Sarah's lakefront property was supposed to be the closing of a painful chapter and the start of a quiet one. 3 years ago, depression had pretty much dismantled my life, cost me my job, strained my relationships, left me feeling like I was drowning on dry land. This cabin was the only place where the noise in my head stopped. It was where I learned to breathe again. And Sarah knew that. She left it to me because she knew I needed it. But she also left me a warning. Her final voicemail, which I still have saved on my phone, was heartbreaking. Her voice was shaky, sounding so small and tired, saying, "Alex, honey, that Peggy woman came by again about the path. She won't leave me alone. I'm just so tired of fighting her. I just want peace." That voicemail haunted me. It made me realize that this wasn't just about property lines. It was about protecting the memory of the woman who saved me. So when I packed up my truck and drove 3 hours north to move in, I wasn't just looking for a vacation home. I was looking for a sanctuary. But life has a funny way of punching you in the gut right when you take a deep breath. I hadn't even finished unloading the first box from my truck when she appeared. It was like she had a radar for new victims. 1 minute the driveway was empty. The next, she was there, Margaret Peggy Thornfield. She looked exactly like you'd expect. Pristine landscaping clothes that had never seen dirt, a smile that was all teeth and no warmth, and that inevitable clipboard. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Margaret, but everyone calls me Peggy. I've been the neighborhood association president for the last 4 years. Your dear Aunt Sarah was very accommodating about our community arrangements." The way she said accommodating made my skin crawl. It sounded less like a compliment and more like an admission of guilt. She pulled out a hand-drawn map from her clipboard, tapping a dotted line that cut straight through my side yard, right down to the water. "This here is the community access path," she explained, her tone breezy and matter-of-fact. "Everyone uses it. It's much more convenient than the public access point, which is a dreadful hike through the woods. We count on our lakefront owners to be team players." There was a warning in her voice, subtle but sharp, like a razor blade hidden in a candy apple. She gestured to her car, which had a laminated sign on the dashboard that read, "Association Official." It looked legitimate enough. I was tired, I was new, and I had spent years in corporate politics where you learn to nod, smile, and verify later. So I played dumb. I told her I'd look into it once I was settled. "Of course, dear," she said, her eyes instantly losing that fake warmth. "Just remember, property values rely on harmony. We've had to take strong action against residents who don't fit in." She drove away, and I was left standing there with a pit in my stomach. Strong action? Against my 80-year-old aunt? The red flags were already waving, but I didn't know I was stepping into a war zone. The first week was a nightmare. That community path saw more traffic than a highway rest stop. I'm talking cars with out-of-state plates pulling up, people unloading kayaks, coolers, beach chairs, boomboxes. They walked through my yard like I was invisible. When I waved or tried to say hello, they looked through me or gave me a quick, dismissive nod. I tried to talk to my neighbors, but it was like walking into a town with a dark secret. Mrs. Martinez, the sweet elderly lady next door, practically jumped out of her skin when I mentioned Peggy's name. She looked over her shoulder, whispered, "Just be careful," and retreated into her house like she was afraid of being seen talking to me. The young couple down the street suddenly found very interesting things to look at on the ground whenever I walked by. I decided to play detective. I figured if I could document the trespassing, I could go to the actual authorities. But let me tell you, watching crime dramas does not prepare you for real surveillance. I set up a camera in a tree, thinking I was being slick, and spent 3 days reviewing high-definition footage of a squirrel eating a pine cone because I aimed it too high. I tried to research property law online and ended up drowning in terms like prescriptive easement and adverse possession until my brain felt like it was melting. I was failing. I was exhausted. And Peggy knew it. She started the psychological warfare. First came the violation notices. 3 in 5 days. One for my mailbox being 6 inches too close to the road. One for my grass being non-compliant height. One for my patio furniture not being in harmony with community aesthetics. Each one came with a threat of a $150 fine. Then came the social media posts. I joined the neighborhood Facebook group and saw Peggy posting vague, passive-aggressive updates about new residents with hostile attitudes and preserving our traditions against outsiders. She was isolating me. She was painting me as the villain before I even had a chance to introduce myself. But then I got lucky. Pure dumb luck. I was down by the water, trying to fix the latch on the boathouse, when I dropped a screw in the tall grass near the property line. I bent down to find it, and saw something tucked behind a thick bush. It was a sign. Not a rusty old no trespassing sign, but a professional, weatherproof, laminated sign attached to a metal stake. It read, Premium Lake Access. $45 per day. Cash or app payment accepted. No camping. Max 6 hours. Contact management for booking. It had a QR code. It had Peggy's phone number. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a community tradition. This wasn't neighbors taking a shortcut. This was a business. She was running a toll road through my front yard. I pulled out my phone and scanned the QR code. It took me to a third-party rental site, not Airbnb, but something more obscure, geared towards private outdoor experiences. And there it was. My cabin. My shoreline. Listed as exclusive private lakefront. The hidden gem. There were photos of my dock. Photos of my aunt's garden. Reviews from people raving about this secluded location and the professional management. One review said, Peggy is amazing. So much better than the public beach. Worth every penny of the $60 weekend rate. $60? The sign said $45. She was using dynamic pricing. She was running a commercial enterprise on my deeded land. I wanted to march over to her house and scream. I wanted to rip the sign out of the ground and throw it through her window. But then I remembered Mrs. Martinez's fear. I remembered Aunt Sarah's tired voice. If I went in hot, Peggy would just claim it was a misunderstanding, hide the signs, and gaslight the whole neighborhood. I needed undeniable proof. I needed to catch her red-handed. I went back to Amazon and bought better cameras. I spent a weekend watching YouTube tutorials on surveillance angles. I set up a perimeter that would make the Secret Service proud. Audio, video, 4K resolution, hidden in birdhouses and fake rocks. And then, I waited. It didn't take long. 2 days later, my audio camera near the bushes picked up Peggy's voice. She was standing right on the edge of my property, talking on her cell phone. Yes, the weekend rate is higher. It's supply and demand. No, don't park on the street. Park in the driveway. The owner isn't there during the day. Just tell anyone who asks that you're visiting the community park. I made $400 last week alone. These city people will pay anything for a little exclusivity. Gotcha. I had the confession. I had the listing. I had the sign. But I needed one more thing. I needed the smoking gun. I needed her to enforce her business in front of a witness. That opportunity rolled up on a Saturday morning in the form of a 12-passenger van. I was drinking coffee on the deck when they arrived. A literal squad of people. 12 of them. They started unloading professional catering equipment, tables, massive coolers, a generator. This wasn't a quick dip in the lake. This was a corporate retreat or a family reunion. They began setting up right on my lawn, hammering stakes into my grass for a volleyball net. I walked down there, phone in my pocket recording audio. Excuse me, I said, keeping my voice calm. I think there's a misunderstanding. This is private property. The group leader, a woman wearing a Smith family reunion t-shirt, looked at me like I was the help. What are you talking about? We booked this 2 months ago. We paid Margaret. You paid Margaret? I asked. Yes. Another guy chimed in, waving a printed email. $55 a head. She said this is the premium community access point. We have the receipt right here. $55 a head. 12 people. That's $660. She made nearly $700 to let strangers trash my yard. I'm sorry, I said, raising my voice so the whole group could hear. Margaret doesn't own this land. I do. And she has no right to charge you a dime. You've been scammed. The mood shifted instantly. The Smith family didn't get mad at me. They got confused, then angry. They started pulling out phones. I called her, the woman said. She said she's the association president. Call her now, I said. Tell her to come down here. Peggy arrived in 8 minutes. I timed it. She pulled up in her sedan, slammed the door, and marched over with that clipboard like she was storming a beach. But she wasn't coming to apologize. She was coming to crush me. She ignored me completely and went straight to the family. I am so sorry, she gushed, putting on a masterclass performance. This resident is new and very hostile. He doesn't understand our community traditions. Please, ignore him. You have every right to be here. Then she turned to me, phone out, recording. Alex, you are harassing paying community members. You are blocking access. I am documenting this for the legal file. She was doubling down. She was so arrogant, so high on her own supply, that she thought she could bully me off my own land in front of 12 witnesses. Peggy, I said, holding up my phone. These people say they paid you. Is that true? They paid a maintenance fee, she shrieked. For the upkeep of the path. It is standard procedure. Show me the bylaws, I said. Show me the bank account. That's when she snapped. She realized she was losing control of the room. The family was looking at her, looking at me, looking at their receipts. She needed a nuclear option. She needed to re-establish dominance. So she dialed 911. I need police immediately. She screamed into the phone, glaring at me with pure hatred. This man is blocking access. He is aggressive. He is threatening a family. I stood there and let her do it. I let her dig the hole deeper. Because I knew something she didn't. I knew who was coming. Officer Reynolds is a legend in this town. He's been on the force for 20 years. He has zero patience for nonsense. And he knows every inch of this county. When his cruiser rolled up, Peggy practically threw herself at the car. Officer. Thank God, she wailed. This man is out of control. Reynolds stepped out, adjusted his belt, and looked at the scene. He saw the tent, the generator, the confused family, and me standing calmly on my porch. Okay, Reynolds said, his voice flat. Who's in charge here? I am, Peggy announced, puffing up her chest. Margaret Thornfield, Association President. This is an authorized community gathering, and this resident is trespassing on community rights. Reynolds looked at her. Ma'am, you're charging admission? It is a maintenance contribution, she insisted. Reynolds turned to the family. Did you folks pay a contribution, or did you pay a fee? The reunion organizer stepped forward. She was done with the drama. She handed Reynolds a piece of paper. We paid a rental fee. Here's the invoice. Lakeview Management Services. It says private rental, $660. Reynolds looked at the invoice. Then he looked at Peggy. Ma'am, do you have a business license for this commercial activity in a residential zone? It's an association matter, she stammered, the color draining from her face. Right, Reynolds said. Let me just check on that association. He walked back to his cruiser and picked up the radio. We stood there in silence. The wind rustled the trees. Peggy was tapping her foot, looking nervous for the first time. Dispatch, Reynolds said, loud enough for us to hear. Run a check on the Lakeview Neighborhood Association. Verify current officers. A minute passed. It felt like an hour. Then the radio crackled back. Unit 4. Records show Lakeview Association is active. President is listed as James Thompson. Secretary is Linda Fry. No listing for a Margaret Thornfield. The silence that followed was heavy. The kind of silence that happens right before a building collapses. That's a mistake. Peggy yelled, her voice cracking. James has been sick. I took over. It was an emergency election. Reynolds walked back over. He wasn't looking at her like a concerned citizen anymore. He was looking at her like a suspect. Ma'am, he said, are you impersonating an officer of an HOA to collect fraudulent fees? No. I am the president, she screamed. James abandoned us. Someone had to lead. Officer, I stepped forward. I have something you need to hear. I played the audio from the bushes. The recording of her on the phone. I made $400 last week. Tell them you're visiting the park. Peggy froze. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. The family reunion organizer gasped. You scammed us, she said, stepping toward Peggy. You told us you owned this land. Reynolds turned to Peggy. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come down to the station. We have some questions about fraud, operating a business without a license, and, frankly, a whole lot of theft. You can't arrest me, she shrieked, backing away. I am the pillar of this community. Without me, this neighborhood falls apart. I am protecting property values. But the handcuffs came out anyway. As Reynolds led her to the car, she was still screaming. She was yelling about how I was an outsider, how the family was ungrateful, how the system was rigged. She never once admitted she was wrong. Even as they put her in the back seat, she was issuing orders. But the story didn't end with an arrest. That was just the tip of the iceberg. The investigation that followed was like pulling a loose thread on a cheap sweater. The whole thing unraveled. It turned out Peggy hadn't been president for 2 years. She lost the election to James Thompson, but when James got sick and took a leave of absence, she just didn't tell anyone. She kept the keys, kept the login to the website, and kept pretending. And the money? Oh, it was bad. Police found a separate bank account under Lakeview Management. She had funneled over $8,000 into it in 18 months. But it got darker. This wasn't just about greed, it was predatory. We found out she had targeted Mrs. Martinez specifically. Mrs. Martinez's husband had dementia in his final years. Peggy had gone over there and convinced him to sign a document granting an easement through their property too. She bullied a dying man to expand her illegal business. She targeted a young family down the street who had a disabled son. She fined them $200 because their wheelchair ramp didn't match the color scheme of the house. It was a fake fine. She pocketed the money. She fined a Hispanic family integration fees when they moved in. Integration fees. Just typing that makes me want to punch a wall. She was charging people for existing while not being exactly like her. When these stories came out, the neighborhood didn't just turn on her, they erupted. The people who had defended her, who thought she was just zealous, realized they had been protecting a monster. Mrs. Martinez, bless her heart, finally spoke up at a community meeting. She stood up, shaking, and told everyone what Peggy did to her husband. That broke the dam. Everyone started sharing their stories. The fines for pride flags, the harassment of single mothers, the bullying of the elderly. Peggy pled out. Her lawyer told her she didn't have a prayer in court. She got 18 months of probation, 240 hours of community service, cleaning the public parks she hated so much, and she was ordered to pay over $13,000 in restitution. She had to sell her house to pay the debts. The court seized the assets. And here's the poetic justice. The day she moved out, she had to drive past my cabin. I was outside, fixing the fence. She slowed down, looking at me. I didn't flip her off. I didn't yell. I just waved. A nice, neighborly wave. She looked away and sped off. The neighborhood is different now. It's quiet. Real quiet. The path through my yard is overgrown again. The grass has recovered. James Thompson is back as president, and the first thing he did was open the books and show everyone exactly where the money goes. Transparency. It's amazing what it does for a community. My cabin is finally what Aunt Sarah wanted it to be. A sanctuary. I sit on the dock now, watching the sun go down, and I don't hear cars. I don't hear screaming. I just hear the water. But I learned something important. We tend to assume that people in charge, people with clipboards and confidence, know what they're doing. We assume they have the right to tell us what to do. But sometimes, the person shouting the loudest is just a con artist with a laminating machine. So, I want to ask you guys, have you ever had a neighbor who acted like they owned the place? Did you ever suspect someone in charge was faking it? What would you have done if you found a sign renting out your backyard? Let me know in the comments. And if this story got your blood pressure up, hit that like button. It helps the channel, and it helps warn people about the Peggys of the world. Don't let them win. Verify everything. Trust your gut. And never, ever let someone steal your peace. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe out there.